I was the last person to talk to Trevor.
From losing one of his best friends,
it really sets your heart in the right place,
to carrying on his legacy.
Neutral does not come without feeling.
DJ Eidson is taking limitless minds beyond the boardroom.
Everybody has a mind. Every mind needs a coach. Mental fitness is really important.
And into the hearts of the world.
Our mission is to impact 1 billion people through mindset. And today is part of that journey.
On an all-new Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers. This is Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers. Hi, DJ. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers. This is a very big treat for me today. And like I said, when we were just talking before I pushed record, my husband is extremely jealous that we get to have this conversation. But what you do with Limitless Minds and your work and everything you're bringing to the world is just so next level, so cool. And I really appreciate that we get to chat today.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be on the show. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. And like I told you offline, anybody who's podcasting and impacting people the way like you are, I would encourage you to continue to do that. It's really great work that you're doing.
Thank you. And it's like I even said to you too, it's almost self-serving. I feel like I'm having continuous coaching sessions from all these amazing people in so many different ways. It's like, am I actually doing this for other people or is it just impacting me? Cool. But it is. It's really a fun way to connect and really get these inspiring messages out into the world. And I know you have a company around this. You have a company about inspiring others. You have a company about the mindset. But I'm interested first and foremost in how you came to be here, because you came from the pharmaceutical world. You came from a very high-powered, very sales-driven space. And now I was
a drug dealer. Courtney, I was a drug dealer. That's what my mom was so proud of me when I came home. That was my very first job out of college. I got to tell her I was selling legal drugs.
Oh my goodness. From drug dealers to mind-altering media now. So tell me how we got here.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. So again, thanks again for having me. Yeah, I mean, you know what? A lot of times I think about, because it's a really good question. It didn't really start in business necessarily, like most people. My mindset journey and this journey that we're on with Limitless Mind started when I was in first and second grade, and really it was a story when I was in my first grade class in Bowling Green, Ohio, and I was really struggling that year. I was having a difficult time reading, engaging with the students. I had a teacher that was not the best for me, and really one story sticks out. It was after lunch or recess, and I went to go to the drinking fountain, and the one little girl said, "You can't drink at that drinking fountain." And I said, "Well, why not?" She said, "Because you're black, and the other drinking fountain is down there." And so that really stung, and I went home and I had told my mom and dad, I said, this place here at this school is not serving me well. And they pulled me out of the school at the end of that year and sent me to a much more diverse school about 30 minutes away in Toledo, Ohio. And there the kids looked, a lot of the kids looked more like me. It was a mixture. But I had a teacher, Mr. McGinnis, who on one of the very first days, we had reading class, and he asked me to bring out my reading book, just like he did everybody else. And he saw that I was the only one that didn't have my book out. And he looked at me and he said, "DJ, why don't you bring your book out?" And I said, "Because I don't know how to read." And I kind of said it with an attitude. And he looked at me and smiled. He goes, "Well, that's great, because I'm going to teach you how to read." And it was at that point I saw somebody that was an authority outside of my parents that really believed in me. He didn't judge me for the color of my skin. He didn't judge me for the fact that I couldn't read, but yet he wanted to pour into me as a person and really help me become the best version of myself. I went from, learning how to read, he actually brought me to my faith. Became a Christian because of Mr. McGinnis.
Wow.
And I spent 3 years at that Christian school, really developing and learning more about myself. And so then, fast forward, I went on to graduate high school. I played college basketball for a couple years. And then I got into the pharmaceutical industry, which I mentioned, where, I started out as an intern, really curious, just trying to bring value, trying to learn and grow. People saw that. I got a full-time position in a pharmaceutical company and just worked my way up, from sales to sales trainer to leader. And I realized that what I learned in first and second grade around mindset was really what set me apart from the people I was working with or competing against or whatever it was. It wasn't the skill set stuff. I mean, I had to know my product, and in pharmaceuticals, you needed to know double blind, randomized, placebo controlled studies. Like you had to know the science behind the stuff. It was just like ingrained, but it was when a challenge, a change, an adversity, or a pressure, when the pressure was high, that I had to activate my mindset to be able to get a competitive advantage and win awards and help my team win awards and all those things. And I really became fascinated, like, with how to unpack that and how to teach my people how to have the right mindset, listening to great podcasts, getting a mentor, reading a book. But there's actual way to programmatically do this. And that's what I became fascinated with. I met a gentleman by the name of Harry Wilson at the last pharmaceutical company I was at. And Harry's younger brother, Russell Wilson, was having a lot of success in the NFL. And he had got that success by not only training his body, but training his mind. And so what we did 5 years ago is we took the mental conditioning program that he does in sports. We took it along with Trevor Moawad, who I mentioned, earlier. What Trevor was one of the world's best brain trainer. Actually, Sports Illustrated named him in 2017 the sports world's best brain trainer. And Trevor and Russell would work on these things, and they had a curriculum around it to really optimize Russell's performance. We took that curriculum and we brought it to the business world. And we worked, actually, our first customer was the company that Harry Wilson and I were at. They said, we love this so much that as long as we can be your first customer, we're willing to let you guys bring this to the world. And so they became our first customer. They were like about $1 billion company at the time, startup pharma. They just exited for $28 billion. Amgen just bought them. And we were able to have a significant impact on that organization at a very early stage through training their sales reps with mindset. So that's what I'm doing. We're, Limitless Minds, they call us, there was an article recently, it calls us the Peloton for mental fitness. So if you're trying to just encapsulate what we're building, that's what we're building. And, our mission is to impact 1 billion people through mindset. And today is part of that journey. So I'm loving talking to your audience and excited to hear, what questions that you have.
Well, that's interesting with the mindset game, because you're coming at it from very competitive spaces, whether it's sales. You said you were a college athlete in basketball. I know Russell Wilson's part of your program, Trevor Moawad with the sports aspect. These are very highly competitive places where you guys are at the top of your game. It requires a mental toughness. And I know you talk a lot about keeping that neutral mindset. That was a lot of what Trevor Moawad's message was, that neutral mindset, which I want to get into. But there was something I heard when I was listening to stuff you were talking about earlier, is that you actually don't start your day there. You start your day coming back to your heart. You start your day coming back to gratitude. So I'm curious for you, because I talk a lot about spirituality. I talk a lot about getting to know your inner self, coming from within and standing in your authority and who you are authentically. It's something that is part of my mission, but I know your heart and your head have to work together to get there. And so how do you do that? Because I want to get into that neutral topic, but how do you start with that heart? How do you come in and come from a place of faith and service and God from within, and then bring your mind into it?
No, it's a great question. And I'll tell you what, when we started this company, one of the first things that I wanted to make sure that we implement into our culture is gratitude. And the way we do that is that every day before you send out a text, an email, before you make a phone call on behalf of the company, you have to to put into Slack what you're grateful for. And what's amazing about that when you start as a company with gratitude is like that's where your heart starts, right? Like that's it's hard to be like great, to be thankful and to be hateful at the same time. You know what I mean? And so when you start with gratitude, it really sets your heart as a leader, as an employee, whatever role that you're in the right place. And it's a great foundation. You also, as a leader, I get to see what's important to my people. So I love going to the gratitude channel because I get to hear about, people's, dogs, their kids, where they travel, what's important to them, their family, their parents. And we get to hear so many great things about our people through what they're grateful for. And so you're right. Mindset, like starting and how you start the day is so important. I like to start the day reading. I've been since I was 14 years old. One of my teachers, Mrs. Mahalik, she handed me, it was in paperback at that time, Our Daily Bread. It's a daily devotional. I read it to this day. And that helps me from a mindset standpoint, again, get in the right place at the very beginning of the day. Gratitude, like you mentioned, is really important. There was an exercise I was doing. I don't do it every day, but there's times where I know that I'm failing on the gratitude piece. And so what I'll do is when I go to sleep, I'll take my phone and I'll put it underneath my bed. And what it forces me to do is when I get up in the morning is to start on my knees and start in prayer and start in gratitude. And it's just a reminder, if I'm in a rut, that's one thing, because I know behaviorally, I know I'm going to reach for my phone like everybody does. But but being on my knees and showing gratitude, being thankful, showing that my faith is important to me really gets me started and headed in the right direction, before I tackle a really active day.
I think I need to practice that because I know it's one of those things. And I think a lot of us do. We know what we're supposed to do. We know we're supposed to go into with a positive mindset. We know we're supposed to be grateful. Even being grateful can become routine. When I know my husband has, had an intentional journal from one of his coaches that he would use. And every day he would write his, what he was grateful for and what his intentions were, and to set his mind in that space. But then he kind of stopped doing it because he's like, I don't feel like I'm actually owning it. I feel like I'm just going through the motions at this point. And he needed to like rework that. And so sometimes we do need that reset to kind of like restructure how we're doing that. And even for me, I have a new idea, or not a new idea. I've just started recently really leaning into the concept of faith and something bigger than me, and starting my day with a prayer and ending it with my journal. And I was doing it regularly. And now, as life does, when you have kids, you have a business, you have things going on, I've stopped. And my husband looked at me the other day and goes, are you still praying in the morning? And we're not like churchgoers or anything. We are extremely believing in a bigger purpose and in service of faith. And I go, no, I stopped. He's like, I know. Like he could tell the way my day was starting. So I love that idea of like putting it under your bed, because it does. It really sets up your day and your mindset for miracles literally to happen in your life. You don't know what amazingness can happen in your life. And if you set that intention in the morning by a prayer and the physical act of getting on your knees and praying, I think it works wonders. But it sounds like for you, you are very, you hold a lot from your childhood, from your teachers. You hold a lot of esteem from there. It seems like that's carried through into your adult life.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that and that's why I'm so passionate about the space that I'm in, because I've had some, great coaches and teachers and mentors throughout my time, all giving me a little bit a different skill set, to tap into. And so I get up really excited. And again, I'm not trying to be like every day I have butterflies of what I'm doing. I don't want to be disingenuous with that, but I will tell you there are often days where I do. I have butterflies, and I'm like, this is my life. This is how I get to impact people every day. I'm not selling a pharmaceutical medication that can only help people if you have allergies. I love doing that work, and I sold as much Claritin as I could and helped people with their allergies so they could show up right. But the reality of it is that, like, not everybody has allergies and not everybody's going to take a medication. In this space, everybody has a mind. Every mind needs a coach. Mental fitness is really important. And so to have the goal of impacting 1 billion people through mindset, that's a real thing that we can do. And even what if I get halfway to that goal or 10% of that goal? I mean, the only reason why I'm at where I am today is because of great people that have helped lift me up. And so, yeah, like that, my childhood and my experiences there, at the time, and I look back at a lot of different experiences and I'm like, dang, that sucked. You know what I mean? It wasn't, I didn't feel good about myself. There's certain regrets I have, all the things, but it has made me who I am. My ability to persevere, my ability to be able to, my mom used to always say to me, she would say, it is what it is. Like something would happen and it wouldn't go my way. She'd say, it is what it is. That's probably the most neutral statement that you can make, right? I mean, I didn't know she was teaching me neutral thinking at the time, but essentially she was saying, like, DJ, accept the facts for what they are. This is what has happened. Take the emotion out of it, take the narrative out of it. But what are you going to do next? What are the actions and behaviors that are going to help you get to your goal? That's neutral thinking. I just unpacked it right there. And so I learned that at a young age through my mother, through different mentors, and it became less about what I was talking about or what I was thinking, and it became more about what I was doing that was going to actually help me get to my goals. And so I'm a very optimistic person. People will probably, that are around me would say I'm positive. But the reality of it is I'm neutral first. And then I'm optimistic about where I want to go. And that's what I think has helped me, whether I'm building my business or building teams or just pouring into my family. I try to be somebody that is, utilizes and taps into neutral thinking, but also is optimistic about, where I want to get to.
I mean, your mom was setting you up for your future before you ever met Trevor. That neutral thinking, it is what it is. I mean, that is, she's like you said, the most.
She's still awesome.
That is the most neutral way to look about it. But that is interesting, where you have to come at it with that neutral mindset, that it is what it is. Keep that neutrality, keep the emotion out of it, but then you get to choose where you go from there. So we get to choose where our mind goes. You want to keep things neutral. You want to keep the situation neutral, but then choose how you react. Is that what you're essentially doing?
Yeah, I am. I do want to, because I don't want to lose the audience here, because I think that sometimes, and especially I'm going to put like my man cap on. This is what annoys my wife or, and I have 3 daughters too. It's like, we're fixers, right? We're solution, oriented. And so what I want the audience to realize is that neutral does not come without feeling. So for instance, when Trevor Moawad, one of my best friends, passed away from cancer 2 years ago, who helped us build this program. His father was one of the original authors for Chicken Soup for the Soul, Bob Moawad. So Trevor grew up at a dinner table every night, hearing about neutral thinking and all the different mindset concepts. So he lived and breathed this. I got really close to Trevor, obviously built a business with him. And then 2 years ago, he passed away. I was the last person to talk to Trevor. I was visiting him. Unfortunately, we thought a regular doctor's appointment turned into him going to the hospital, to the ICU, to him passing away within 2 days. But before he passed, I was able to spend a good time with him, where he was talking. And there's a couple things. Number one, I got to see him truly activate his mindset over that 2-year battle with cancer, and going from a concept where he's writing about it in a book, getting the neutral, or it takes what it takes, to him actually utilizing this for the biggest battle of his life. That was the number one thing that I saw and learned. Number two is that I learned that like neutral, you have to feel with neutral. And this is what I was saying about men versus women, and like how we go to solutions right away. Like if you don't take time to actually feel what has happened and what's going on, if I try to say, okay, Trevor passed away, and the next day I'm like, well, what steps do I got to take to get to the goals I want? No, I have to process what just happened. And so that's a important part. And that's why I said, I don't want to lose your audience in terms of being like, we're just coming straight to the solution. Once you process it and you really feel it, then you can really truly get behind the right actions and behaviors to get to your goal. So like once we realize and I accept that Trevor's gone, the last thing that I said to him is, hey, listen, man, we are going to carry out your legacy. We're going to still continue to drive towards those billion people. And so, and then after that, whatever time period it was for me to feel and process, I then had to get behind those actions and behaviors to advance this business forward. So I wanted to unpack neutral in a real life situation. Yeah. Starting with that processing, going to neutral, getting behind the behaviors, and getting to where you want to get to.
And I think that is a huge part of it, because this whole concept of staying neutral, we are human. We are going to have emotions. We are going to have feelings. I've been dealing with that. And my mentor was literally talking me off the ledge over the weekend, like stay neutral, take the emotion out of it. This isn't about you, because I was in a back and forth with a client of mine, and we are writing her book, and it's a very emotional journey. And I have to remember, like, this is extremely emotional for her. This is her airing out all of her dirty laundry. And I'm just the writer of it for her. I am helping her get through something. But then I start to get, and especially as women and people in general, but women, we are more empathic. We'll take on that emotion. And so I was reacting in ways that weren't neutral, that were, your egos come to play. I mean, men do this all the time. Think about it in sports. Your egos are going to come to play. It's hard to take that emotion out of it. I had to take a step back. It was like 3 or 4 days later that I finally was like, talked off the ledge between my husband and my mentor. Like, no, this is not about you. Take it down a notch and come back in a more neutral tone, and things are back on track. Right. But it takes that time. You have to work through that.
It does. And men are absolutely emotional, and our emotion typically comes with our ego. When something impacts our ego, that's where we get like, we kind of perk up. Yes. And that, and I think what, the thing that I learned with this neutral journey, and when we look at how men always go straight to the solution, is that can come off as very disingenuous to the people that you're leading if you just automatically just discount and don't show any empathy for what somebody's going through, and you go right into like taking action. So there's like it's a balance, and that's why it takes practice. Now there are situations like, for instance, like if you look at an NFL quarterback interception, like he can't sit there and like process it for, an hour, because he's got to get right back on the field and lead his team. So certain things, it's like almost like these micro where you have to get to neutral quickly. And so what we find on like, there's these bigger things where it takes longer to process, but most of the adversities, the challenges, the changes, any of the pressures that come up are pretty quick throughout the day. And do you go down this rabbit hole of negativity because you spilled some coffee on your blouse, or whatever it is? Now it's like, I spilled coffee. This is the worst day of my life. What am I going to do? I know this meeting's not going to go well now. And then all this whole negative commercial is running through your head. So what we talk a lot about is like, and Trevor, I just posted this recently, because Trevor used to say it all the time. He'd say, stop saying stupid stuff out loud. And so a lot of the training that we do, and that professional athletes do, and that these executives at the major companies that we work with, that they do, is like, we teach them is just don't don't say negative things out loud. And it's amazing. That was the very first thing that Trevor worked with University of Alabama and Nick Saban. When he goes into a room with all these 4 and 5 star athletes, and he tells them that one thing. Now that becomes part of their culture. So it's an expectation that we're not going to say negative things, and that then allows them to be able to focus on their skill set and all the things that they need to do. By removing the negativity, it allows them to flourish. It's like weeding, right? Nature teaches us a lot. Like if I want those flowers to grow, I take the weeds out, right? I don't just keep watering and watering and watering. Actually, if you water too much, it's going to kill the plant. So you got to take the weeds out and let that plant flourish. And so nature teaches us so much, and we do a lot of that with our training. We remove the negativity from an organization, or at least do the best we can.
Well, is it, I think Trevor is the one that said it, that like if you say something negative out loud, it's like 10 times it or something. There's like a percentage that, I mean, I'll say something negative not all the time, but like I'll say something negative and Matt's like, don't say that, that's 10 times more likely it's going to happen or whatever. Right. I mean, cause he, I'm pretty sure it was Trevor that said that.
That's right. That's in the first book. It takes what it takes. But yeah, absolutely. It has such, and what's interesting about it is, and, again, leading people, and one example I'll give you, like during COVID, we had to quickly pivot from being a, live speaking company to being a virtual company in, March 2020. If I would have went to my team and been like, when COVID first hit and we were all home for a month, and I would have said, hey, listen, team, we got this. You know what? We're just going to keep doing business as usual. Like that would have come off as very disingenuous to my team. On the flip side, I could have said, you know what? How are we going to stay in business? Everything we do is live. Like, I mean, we're done. Like you guys might as well just go ahead and get your resumes ready and keep, and that negativity that works. It just works the wrong way. We would have went out of business and that wouldn't have been good for anybody. And so again, what we teach is like, what were the facts? The facts were, listen, if I want to be good in this business and Limitless Minds wants to go on to impact people, we better get really good at Zoom. We better learn how to impact people virtually. We better be the best at engaging our customers from afar. And that's what we did. And so we just got behind the right actions and behaviors, regardless of what the circumstances were. And so activating neutral and doing that, you can see so many examples of that in your everyday life.
Well, I also think, and I've heard this, that the best leaders are vulnerable leaders that allow themselves to feel, that allow themselves to empathize with their teams and the people they are leading. So you can't just always, I think when it comes to decision making and mindset and moving yourself forward, you need to take that neutral aspect into account so that you can make level-headed decisions that aren't fueled by emotion. But when it comes to leading and connecting with others, we have to allow ourselves to go into those feelings and get vulnerable. I'm a storyteller. That's what I always teach anyone that's trying to write, is you have to connect on a vulnerable emotional level in that respect. So someone can say, I see a little bit of me in you. Yeah. Like you telling me that story of when you were growing up and going through school, like I was appalled when you said that girl said you couldn't drink at that. Like, does that still happen today? Crazy, right? That's ridiculous. But but my heart goes out to you. I can empathize and I can connect with you on that level. Like I can't even imagine. Yeah. So we have to find that balance between the emotional vulnerability that we bring to the table and our growth with that neutrality.
Well, it's true. And I think what I understand, especially through mindset, is that we all go through this thing where we have this thinking, right? It's just, I think it's almost like, and we'll hear our speakers talk about this. We're hardwired for that because you go back to whatever the Neanderthal days and it's like, you were just trying to survive. So you were always thinking that was going to be something attacking you. And so we are wired like that. Once you understand that and you realize that, then you can do certain things, like some of the stuff that we've talked about, to rewire yourself. And so, I think there's two things that I always think about with mindset and some of the top performers. What stands out to me, number one, they believe in themselves. They believe in themselves. They also typically believe in a higher purpose. But belief is so important. Like, it's the foundation of a good mindset, of a good life, really. And I think that gets overlooked a lot, because again, we're always trying to just do stuff to be great. The second thing is, and it's like, I don't know, I should Google it sometime, but like, we read all these books about all these things that you can do and, to be great and successful. But one of the things that is really not talked about a lot, but again, I see people that have strong mindset that are very successful in business and life. They're disciplined. Like, that's why I said I should Google it. Is there a book called Discipline? Like, I don't really know, but I can tell you right now, the people.
Let's write
exactly.
it.
Maybe we should. But if you're disciplined and consistent, like, you're going to be successful. Like, it just is what it is. When I look at Russ and I look at his day to day, like, from the way he feeds his mind, his spirit, from what he doesn't do, what he refrains from, like, that's why he's where he's at. That's why he's been successful in the NFL and business. And that's why he'll continue to be successful. That does not mean that he won't have bad years, right? Like, that's going to happen. So people are like, well, what about last year? Or what about the first two games? Like, all the stuff. I mean, you're going to always have that, right? Yeah. Like, people hate on people that are successful, but I've watched him. I watched him prepare on a Tuesday for a game. I went to his house and we were, Harry and I popped in on him, and he's in front of his TV screen. He's got his assistant, and he's like talking to his assistant about, like, he's like, and they were playing the Vikings, and he's like, Miller, right tackle, leads with his left foot, played college at, Minnesota, in the coaching tree of, and he named the coach. He's like, he has a tendency to do this. And his assistant is like, and so he goes to the next player, cornerback, and he's talking through that. And after about 10 minutes of watching this, I go, Russ, I'm like, do you do this before every game? He said, yeah, I've been doing this for, the past decade before games to get prepared. He goes, but really, he goes, I know this stuff, now because I've studied it so long. He goes, actually, the report that my assistant is putting together is for the team, for my teammates. And he goes, so I give that to them on Wednesday or whatever it is, and they'll read through it so they're prepared for the game. And I'm like, that's pretty awesome. Even to the point to where he'll put something like funny in it to see who read it and things like that. So it's kind of clever. Yeah. But it was interesting because on the plane ride home, I remember thinking, am I disciplined and prepared in any aspect of my life like Russell's preparing for a Sunday night game on a Tuesday? He's Tuesday before the Sunday night game. Am I doing anything in my life, whether it's in my personal, professional, spiritual life, to prepare like this? And so that's what elite performers, they're disciplined, they're consistent, they prepare. And so that's, but again, not really sexy. Nobody sees that, right? They just think that, oh, he's got a good arm or he's fast or whatever it is. And so those are the two things, belief and discipline, that I think really, people with strong mindsets have.
I mean, I'm blown away by that. That's so much work. And he's doing it to better his team, which is so cool that he doesn't even need to do it for himself anymore. But what is the difference between discipline and consistency? Yeah. Because you've said both of those words, and, like, discipline's like, in my mind is showing up even when you don't want to. It's that constant thing. But so is consistency, continuously showing up. So where is there a difference in that?
Discipline, you are consistent, right? So there's a consistency with discipline, but discipline is what you're not doing sometimes. Like, consistency is more about what you are doing. Discipline is like what you're not doing. Okay. And sometimes it is what you're doing, what you're doing too. But I think that those would be the difference. Cause like, if I'm disciplined in my diet, right, I'm not going to drink pop, right? Or whatever it is. I may not choose to do one or two things that I know if I do it, with my dad being a diabetic, that's going to lead me down the wrong path. Consistency would just be like, hey, I'm always doing something to get me towards my goal, or I'm always doing something, to get me headed in the right direction. So that's what I would say how the two are different.
So when it comes to mindset and this like ideas of discipline and consistency and all this, when you're coming to the mindset, bringing in that neutrality, is it like doing sit-ups? Is it like something like you said, a quarterback can't sit and cry over an interception, Russell can't take that moment. Hey guys, I need a moment on the sidelines. I just threw an interception.
That's right.
The game clock's still going. You got to keep at it. Can you like turn it on like that? Is that just repetition? Is that just the discipline and consistency of training your mind that allows you to react in the moment to keep neutral?
Yep. You have to practice this stuff. It's mental fitness. It's like me going to the gym after this and saying, showing up and then not coming back for 364 days and being like, I'm good because I went that one time. It has to happen on a regular basis. Yeah. Our mind is a muscle, right? Like we have to exercise. We have to treat it like a muscle. We have to exercise it. And so, so I think that what you'll see elite performers do, again, whether it's in sports or business, is that they are consistently building into their mind. They're treating mental fitness like a habit, and they're doing things on a regular basis so that they can stay at the top of their game. And so, I do think you have to treat it like a muscle. I think you have to treat it like your physical health. And the people that do that, they see great results.
And so what do these exercises look like? Is it meditation? Is it reading a book? Is it listening to podcasts? Or is there something just more just like managing your thoughts? Like what does a routine or regime look like for that mental fitness?
So I'll just give you an example of like how we take them through our program. The first thing they do, we got to get everybody grounded in the fundamentals of thinking. And so these are like concepts like neutral thinking, resiliency, energy management, awareness, clarity. There's 5 fundamentals that we teach. And so once an organization will take 60 minutes, we usually go in live with a mental conditioning coach. Like our head of mental conditioning was the mental conditioning coach for the Chicago Cubs in 2016 when they won the World Series. After 100 years of not winning the World Series, they were, I think they called themselves before they came in with that coaching group and the mental conditioning group that they came in with. They called themselves the lovable losers. I mean, this was something that it was built into their culture. They weren't going to win. And so Josh Lifrak was one of the people that helped turn that around. And they go on to win the World Series. We were able to, him and Trevor were really good friends, and Josh joined us a handful of years ago and has taken on that. So you'll have our corporate clients have access to coaches like that. They'll teach them the fundamentals of thinking, 60 minutes live. And then the second part of it, everybody leaves with the app, which has coaches, content, and community. So in there, you can do exercises. There's mindset exercises. There's videos. There's with coaches talking in those 5 different areas and fundamentals. There's a community aspect to it where you'll see the community engage, different posts, posting different pictures, talking about different, having different questions and comments around mindset. So that's the second piece. And then the third piece is every month we will take, let's say we're working with a group of 1,000 sales reps at Johnson & Johnson. We'll break them down into districts or regions, and we'll give them a mental conditioning coach. And for an hour, usually between a half an hour and an hour, they'll go over a concept like neutral thinking. And they'll say, how do we activate neutral thinking based on the challenge or the adversity that we're going through currently today? And that coach will walk them through that. They'll do exercises on what that looks like to effectively go through that change. And so that's the 3 components of our program. So you can see it's like, again, like we want to make this the Peloton for mental fitness. We continue to up level our app. So there's more and more content and exercises that'll go into that. But that's where we're at today.
And your app is available to everyone, right?
At this point, it is. What I will say though is that our app alone, without going through it with in a court with through a company and a team with the labs, is only going to be so effective. Like it's not really you can get it on the Apple
Mm-hmm.
store, but it's not going to be really as effective as if your organization signs up for it and you can go through all three of the components of the program. Now, what we are doing,
Yeah.
and this is just, again, this is probably more information than you were looking for, but right now, like the roadmap for this, again, you don't get to 1 billion people just working with companies and doing groups of salespeople. The roadmap is to
Mm-hmm.
ultimately continue to up-level the app to where all three of the components of our program can just be housed in one digital experience. And so we are continuing
Mm-hmm.
to invest in the app and come out with future versions so that we can go direct to consumer. So yeah, that's a long-term play.
Well, I mean, I don't think anyone that has reached any sort of level of success like we're talking about, and this doesn't mean necessarily success is different to everyone, but in the career success or elite success that we're talking about, most people, I think, will argue they didn't get there alone. They had a coach, they had a mentor, they had that mental conditioning. You have to invest in yourself to get there. I mean, you can listen to all the podcasts in the world, you can listen to the books, but you can get the app. But like you said, without that personal experience, and that comes back to that connection with others, that vulnerability with others, that I see you with others, that really helps you take it to that next level.
Community, and it's interesting too, because like what I've learned in business and just having and running this business over the past 5 years is that you have to be able to evolve your product and your platform as the environment evolves. And so like what I'm seeing is community is so important right now. People are lonely. They feel disconnected, and partially because the technology, the phones and the things that we're doing to ourselves, but the ability to be able to, if I'm going to accept that the technology and the phone is here, I mean, it's not going anywhere. How do we take community, which people are starving for, and you take the technology and you merge them together so people can just continue to show up the best version of themselves and not feel lonely. And so that's what we're doing with Limitless Minds, this Peloton for mental fitness, is to say, let's build into people's minds. And my hope is that it's not for hours and hours a day on our app. I don't want that type of engagement. If it's a minute, if it's 2 minutes, and I can help you prep in a way so that you can navigate through your day better, then that's what it is. And so that's the vision of kind of what we're building and how we're looking at the landscape of the business right now.
Bringing it back to faith now, because that was one of the concepts that we talked about the discipline and we talked about the consistency. Why is faith such a big aspect? Why is believing in something bigger than you? Because it is something that anyone and everyone I've talked to, I don't care what walk of life they are in, that is what ultimately it all comes down to, is faith and service of others. Those are two of the biggest things. And you are talking about optimal performance and you're talking about achieving things, but you keep coming back to this idea. You want to serve others. You want to impact others. So there's so much in what you're doing that is rooted in something bigger than you. How does that play an impact in this mindset game?
You mentioned a big word, in your question, and that was purpose. And, if you find somebody that is lost or that is struggling, and you start to really unpack that, a lot of times there's a lack of, and I said loneliness, but there's also a lack of purpose there. Not to say people aren't just going through things. I mean, listen, some people are just sad and depressed because they literally are going through like stuff and it's difficult. I think, again, once you've accepted what your reality is, and we talk about the right actions and behaviors, if you have a purpose to drive towards, you're much more likely to show up better. And so faith and purpose are so important. If I just looked at things transactionally, our business and my life would only get to a certain level. What we talk about, and I was just on a call earlier with my team, I said that we are not about transactions, we're about transformation. And every single interaction with our partners, with our clients, with other employees, it's got to be about transformation. And transformation is about purpose, right? We're transforming people to get, and for a bigger purpose. And so, yeah, I mean, listen, we're hardwired as people. Again, I bring back nature. It's like, if you look at nature, God is showing us certain things, there's a lot to learn about nature. There's seasons, right? Like seasons, like there's all, like they come and go, and you can act surprised that it's getting colder when it gets into September and October, or you can just accept that the seasons are changing, and then look at what kind of impact you can make during that season, and it transitions to life. And so I'm so fascinated with plants and trees, and like how they bear fruit, and how you have to water them, and how they need the sun, and how the elements. And so again, there's all metaphors in there for life. And so yeah, faith and purpose and what God is just showing us through, if we just take time to get off of our phone and just look around, is really, really beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, that is huge. Even anything you're doing now, you're just sowing the seeds for your future. Coming back to nature, like you have to consistently tend that garden. You have to consistently sow those seeds and then have faith. And then have faith that it's going to grow. You plant that seed and have faith that fruit is going to blossom.
Like what I've realized too, just if you do the right thing and you pour into people, and you just make good decisions, you don't know when that fruit is going to come. You don't know when that plant is going to blossom. You just don't. And we're seeing that with our business. Like a lot of the relationships I had in my early 20s when I first started in pharmaceuticals has afforded us to be in 9 of the top 12 pharmaceutical companies in the world. We work with Johnson & Johnson and Merck, AstraZeneca, Sanofi. We work with all of these huge pharmaceutical companies, and it wasn't because we have some great marketing message. We got the opportunity to get in front of them because of seeds that were planted a long time ago, and we have a product that's impacting their organization. And so, but I didn't know that I was making an impression on these folks, 20 years ago, that are now in these decisions, like they're in these big roles and they're making decisions, and they trust and they like the results that they're getting. And so we keep getting invited back. But that's an example of seeds that were sown and planted a long time ago. But I wasn't doing it with like, hey, I'm going to get something out of you 20 years from now when I start this business. I didn't have that kind of foresight. I was just trying to do the right thing and bring value and be honest and show integrity and be disciplined, all the things. And so I would encourage anybody that's starting out in their career, like, do the right thing, bring value, and you will be surprised at how many doors God opens up for you.
I mean, isn't that true though? That is one of the trickiest things about faith and purpose and that higher power and leaning into it is we don't have any control over the timing. We don't know what is happening now, where it's going to lead down the road. But when you do have that faith in something bigger than you, it's all going to be connected in some way, and it is going to show up for everyone's
and it's
highest good.
Again, with the audience, it's not easy all the time, especially as a leader.
No.
I always I tell my team, be great in the gray. If it's a black and white issue, those are easy. Like that. As a matter of fact, AI is going to be able to take care of most of those decisions. Yeah. It's leaders that are great in the gray that are the ones that are impacting people the most. So how can you do that? How can you run at the gray where it's like, I want to be the one to help figure this out and this decision out? And it's hard. Where you're dealing with a difficult employee maybe, or you're dealing with a difficult situation with a customer where you're like, should I let that just pass, or should I, call it out? There's all these gray things that come up, and it's incumbent upon good leaders, great leaders, to want to dive in there and figure out how to make it work and make the right decision, and be willing to fail and make the wrong decision. That's how I've learned a ton of stuff. You talk about neutral. If I would have had a neutral attitude when I first went in as a leader of people, I wouldn't have made a bunch of assumptions that were false. I would have looked at the facts and the truth that would have helped me better, make better decisions. And so, yeah, like you got to be willing to fail, got to be on this constant quest for knowledge.
But even in those failures, you have to look at them as neutral, because a failure is an opportunity to learn. So something good is always going to come out of it. And that's where we come back to that neutral space. Like, we always have to bring it back to the neutral. A failure isn't really a failure.
I mean, you hear a lot of people say, like, a failure is a lesson, right? Like, I mean, that's pretty cool when you look at it like that. I think I heard Kobe say that here recently on one of his old, highlight films. But yeah, I mean, and I guess too, the thing is like, I think a lot of people will listen to podcasts and they might see somebody like yourself or one of your guests, and they'll say, you know what, they got it all figured out. The reality of it is that it's not true, right? But are you willing to say, I don't have it all figured out, but I'm going to try to do whatever I can to get the kind of knowledge and the practices that I can see people who have figured some things out. This is what's going to help me navigate through my life during this season. And that's what I love about your podcast, and you bringing all the different types of folks on. You really are doing great and impacting people, by putting yourself out there and producing a podcast of such great quality.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to switch gears a little bit before we jump off, because I know you're a sports guy, and I'm a sports person. We're big into sports in my family. Colorado and Deion Sanders. What do you think?
I watched. Did you watch the 60 Minutes with him?
No, I didn't. I didn't.
I followed it from afar. But when I watched and saw he was going to be on 60 Minutes, he kind of unpacked how he came to Colorado and his expectations. I actually had my kids watch it with me. I rewound it after I heard what he said, and essentially he sat the whole team down when he first came in. And he told them, this was December or January of last year. And he said, listen, you guys are 1-11, and, most of you guys aren't going to make it here. So you're going to probably have to need to figure out what you're going to do next. And so the announcer goes, hey, you're supposed to be this guy that's like pouring into the youth and giving them a chance and this and that. Why would you come and say that? And he goes, here's the deal. If something that I say, those words, like, make somebody want to leave here, then they don't need to be on this team. He goes, because words, by me telling you that you can't do it, your belief in yourself should just still make you want to stay in that room. If you go run away because one person said something like that, then you're probably not going to be part of this winning culture that I'm building. And I was like, wow. We talk about that all the time, about how words are powerful both ways, right? Whether it's affirmations or negativity. And what was interesting is that was his test for that team. And 51 of those players left. They went into the transfer portal. And the ones that stayed are now, 3-0. And they're part of this amazing ride. And so I wanted my kids to see, like, you don't let somebody tell you that, I don't care if it's your coach, I don't care if it's a teacher like I had back in first grade. It doesn't matter. You don't let somebody tell you that you're not good enough. You go out there, you put the actions and behaviors to be great, and then you can be part of a great team and a great culture. And so that one thing that I saw him, again, I haven't watched one game. I've seen some highlights here and there, but I love the fact that he's pouring into his kids in a way that's setting them up for success after football. And those 51 kids who left, they're watching that interview too, and that's probably fundamentally changed their lives. Maybe even more so if they would have went on the ride. So it's just like I love what he's teaching.
Right. I love that. I love everything you're doing. You're welcome. How do you find your app? How do we work with you? Get involved with Limitless Minds.
To follow me is through LinkedIn. It's just DJ, last name Idson, Eidson. Direct message me. Go to our website, limitlessminds.com, if you want to learn more. I read all those info box inquiries because I love to hear who's reaching out and wants to learn more. So yeah, I mean, and what I'd love to do, if you're a leader out there and you have a team, direct message me. We'd love to impact your team. And, we'll get my guy, David Zay, who's our head of sales and He does a really head of talent. He does a lot to really get our message out there, and to the world. And he's done great working with some of the best organizations in the world. So yeah, I'd love to engage with you. So follow me on LinkedIn. I'm also on Instagram too as well, DJ Eidson. And so love to follow you. Follow me on those places.
Thank you, DJ. I had such a great time talking with you. I really, really do love your message, and I love that you're continuing on Trevor's legacy.
It. And listen, remember, you don't have to be sick to get better. So go out there and have a great day. And it was great talking to everybody here on this podcast. Thank you.
And that's it for today's Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you, DJ Idson, for joining me in such a great conversation all about our mental fitness, flexing those mental muscles so that we can achieve greatness, that we can show up as our best and really fulfill our purpose and impact others from service and faith and so much more. I love talking to DJ. If you want to get in touch with him, I'll put all the information of how to find him in the show notes below. And as always, you can find Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers and Intentional Media on my website at CourtneyMyers.com. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.